G'day guys, how are we all? Just a little video in prep for next week's session. We're going to continue with the real talk training, obviously, which is the real weightlifting, I guess, of our work. And when we get to a point where it becomes quite habitual, then we know we're getting really close to where we're at. But again, like anything new, we have to do some pretty sort of heavy lifting and build a strong foundation. First and foremost, the last session was excellent. From our perspective at PBD, it couldn't have gone any better. And I would imagine you would have felt potentially discomfort, awkwardness. Some of you may have not even liked it, but be rest assured that from our perspective, as far as developing an inclusive, healthy and high-performing culture, which is what it's all about, that was as good as it gets. Your honesty was great, and there was two separate occasions where we closed an expectation-reality gap. You know, the one that springs to mind without having the file open was we want Steve to be more open-minded to our ideas. But we also know as a high yellow team, we're going to be full of ideas. But our gap is a little bit of the blue, closing things out. So we closed a gap that we want to be heard, but also understand that Steve has a great filter for understanding what's in scope and out of scope. So now we'll support him and each other to be more open to new ideas. And in response to that, we'll be okay if he says, I'm hearing you, can we just put that down the line a little bit, or whatever the answer may be, all right? In our world, we always say lean into having the conversation and then support each other for change, right? We cannot change unless we actually have that conversation, right? And in most situations, the expectation-reality gap is a blind spot of some sort, okay? And when we do that for each other, as much as it's a bit uncomfortable at times, it's what's required to create the space to create the change, yeah? So I got off and my weekly review with my team, it was, I was buzzing from the session because of the gaps that we closed. So remember that this is the real work of building culture. It builds enormous amounts of trust when we're honest with our mates, and it builds even more trust when we support our mates to get better. And so next session, we'll all get a chance to break out into our groups. You've got your data for each other and you'll go through a very similar process. We will review the last session, but then we'll break out into rooms and we'll actually practice giving and receiving feedback and practicing real talk based on those small groups that we have in the forms that you've already filled out. First receiving, then reading out your self-reflection and then closing the gap. It's going to be a really good session. And other than that, we'll touch on a bit of profiling as well, just to keep learning about different ways to use that information and make sure we use it to help behaviour change and not as an excuse tool. I've now got a bunch of admin work that I've got and it's creating me a little bit of anxiety. And it's in the afternoon where I'm not normally great, so I've got on my list straight to one of the private rooms here, chuck on my mask, do my meditation, get my brain reactivated, because I know as a high yellow that the blue work gives me the most neurological energy depletion. So I'm going to go get a bit of brain energy back in the old noggin. So we'll talk a bit more about that. But yeah, get ready for more real talk. And then once that's completed, then we'll talk about what are we going to do to support each other from a systems perspective to enable real talk to come alive and bring those behaviours of your code to life over a sustained period of time. If you've got any questions, please always reach out. Love hearing from you. It's part of our services, so don't be shy in reaching out and asking any questions. And we'll see you next week in Zoomland. Ciao, ciao.